Demographics. Thursday, May 14, 2020. 8:28 p.m. Demographics.
Demographic structure of society. Age. Sociology looks at different age cohorts, groups, specifically at age groups/generations, because they all live through the same events in certain time. Baby boomers is large population in US, now up to 60s. Grew up in post-World War II periods, leaving workforce. Silent generation, older than baby boomers born during Great Depression. GI generation, oldest people alive today. Because of new advancements, people live longer, estimated by 2025 that 1/4 of population will be greater than 65, right now only 13.5%. 65 is when people retire. Can look at dependency ratio. An age-based measurement takes people less than 14 and greater than 65 who are not in the labor force and compares that to number of people who are. Higher the ratio, more dependent people there are. Although living longer means can contribute longer to workforce. But as we become older, our body breaks down. Who are not in the labor force and compares that to number of people who are. Older people are 5x more likely to use health services, but age affects what kind of healthcare they can get. Discrimination. Need for society to readjust expectations of old age. Can still contribute to social, economical well-being of society. Life course theory. Aging is a social, psychological, and biological process that begins from time you born till time you die. Age-based expectations no longer apply as they used to as people live longer. Age stratification theory suggests age is way of regulating behavior of a generation. Activity theory looks at how older generation looks at themselves. Certain activities or jobs lost, those social interactions need to be replaced so elderly can be engaged. Disengagement theory. Older adults and society separate, assumes they become more self-absorbed as they age. But considers elderly people still involved in society as not adjusting well, which is debatable. Continuity theory. People try to maintain same basic structure throughout their lives. As they age, make decisions to adapt to external changes and internal changes of aging. Although need more healthcare professionals and other services to support them, we have a great social/cultural/economic resource is available to us. Demographic structure of society. Race and ethnicity. Race, a socially defined category based on physical differences between groups of people. Racial formation theory looks at social/economic/political forces that result in racially constructed identities. Sometimes differences are real, but sometimes only defined by history. In the US, race is defined by skin color, but hair color is irrelevant. Latin America can be broken down to 5 to 6 races in SA. Ethnicity is also socially defined, but these groups are defined by shared language, religion, nationality, history, of some other cultural factor. Less statistically defined than racial groups and can change over time. A minority can be absorbed into majority after a few generations. A minority is a group that makes up less than half the total population and is treated differently due to some characteristic. Racial differences can cause drastic events such as genocide or population transfer, forcefully moved. Intercolonialism, minorities segregated and exploited. Assimilation, person's culture comes to resemble that of another group. Many differences in healthcare, education, wealth, morality rate, etc. Interesting discrimination is present in criminal justice system. More incarceration of minorities. Pluralism encourages racial and ethnic variation. Dominant groups have racialized minority groups, ascribes some racial identity to members of racial group they didn't identify for themselves. Demographic structure of society. Immigration. Immigrants face severe challenges when arriving to a new country. People want to help them but are wary of their different cultures. Number of immigrants can put pressure on welfare capabilities of a country, as they tend to move to industrialized nations like NA, Middle East, and Europe/Asia. Can be functional by alleviating labor shortages and reducing population dam in heavily populated origin countries. However, can be exploited by countries unconcerned about global inequalities from profit-seeking. Immigration itself can cause problems. If too much immigration, area can't handle demand for social services. Too many skilled people may leave their home country. Fear/dislike of immigrants a different race than host country. People immigrate because of war, famine, or can't make a living in home country. Better jobs and education. Transnational corporations take advantage of cheap labor to bring costs down. Every country has own policies, but often biased depending on where applicant is from. In 1986, U.S. passed the Immigration Reform and Control Act, forbade hiring of illegal immigrants, but extended amnesty and legal status to illegal immigrants already there. Some policies encourage families of immigrants to move, to keep money in local economy instead of sending them money. European Union, residents in EU can live and work anywhere in EU. Since 9/11 immigration more difficult, increased security checks. Demographic structure of society: sex, gender, and sexual orientation. Media often portrays gender as binary, female versus male. However, there's 5 considerations: biological, identity, gender they identify as, expression, gender they express, attraction, gender they're romantically attracted to, and fornication, gender they're sexually attracted to. Biological XX or XY, but some intersex people have 1 or 3+, so express different sex characteristics. Some intersex characteristics are born with both male and female characteristics due to hormones. Gender: a social construction, 2 factors: identity and expression. Many possible combinations: X someone biological male and identify as male, cisgender, or identify as female, transgender. Cisgender male can express a socially male or female appearance. Some people are genderqueer, not male or female, and can present as genderqueer or identify as male/female. Sexual orientation, not dependent on sex/gender of a person. You can be attracted to any gender but only have sex with females, or any combination. You can be attracted to no gender. Stereotype norm is straight. Is there a gay gene? No answer. Even if there is, does that make their love any less real? If it is genetic, discrimination is as wrong as it is in race. If it isn't and is a choice, still equally bad because race itself is a social construction. Restrictions on rights of homosexuals: marry or visit partner in hospital. Many differences between men and women: discrimination, pay, expected roles. Men more likely to get heart disease while women more likely to have psychological illness. Societal expectations affect what problems will be reported. Gender schema theory: cognitions that constitute the male identity. Gender script: organized information regarding order of actions appropriate to familiar situation. Urbanization. Urbanization is movement of people from rural to urban areas. Rural is anywhere with less than 1,000 people per square mile. Has to have less than 25,000 residents. Urban areas include cities/towns with greater than 1,000 people per square mile. Cities have over 50,000 people. Metropolis have over 500,000 people. If many metropolises are connected, called megalopolis, x 44 million people in NYC area. Cities are sites of culture but also host to more crime. According to conflict theory, they're sources of inequality. From symbolic interactionism viewpoint, cities are places where people can get different perspective of looking at life. Why people move to urban areas? More job opportunities and more options for education/healthcare/ etc. Isn't enough land for everyone to farm. Crowding can occur in cities. And less sense of belonging, so we join groups to form communities. Suburbanization is movement away from cities, but commute for work can be long and harder to get medical help. However, suburbs form their own economic centers. Silicon Valley. Beyond suburbs are exurbs, prosperous areas outside the city where people live and commute to city to work like suburbs. Urban renewal revamping old parts of cities to become better. But can lead to gentrification, which means when redone they target a wealthier community which increases property value. People there before are pushed out because they can't afford it leads to great inequality in cities. Rural rebound people getting sick of cities and moving back to rural areas. People who can afford to leave the city often move to scenic rural areas. Population dynamics. Looks at how population of a region changes, factors that increase/decrease a population. 3 factors contribute to total growth rate: fertility, migration, mortality. Fertility is ability to have babies, which add to the population. Fecundity is the potential reproductive capacity of a female. Migration is number of people moving permanently into/out of countries. Doesn't change total people on planet, but does change it in a region. Mortality is death, decreases population. To measure these, we use rates. Measure rates over 1 year, and per 1,000 people so rates are comparable. What affects population changes? Increase, births and immigration. Can also look at births in terms of fertility rate. On average, women in US gives birth to 2.1 children in her life. If 2, no increase/decrease in population. Decrease, death and emigration. Can calculate mortality rate by age group or country. Growth rate is not always a positive number. While world population grows, growth rate of some countries is negative. Demographic transition. Demographic transition is a model that changes in a country's population. Population will eventually stop growing when country transitions from high birth/death rates to low fertility/mortality. This stabilization often occurs in developed countries. When immigrants travel to developed countries, they affect demographic transition of the country by increasing fertility and decreasing mortality. Often healthier people migrate. 5 stages. 1. High birth rates due to limited birth control, advantage for more workers, and high death rate due to disease. Most countries at this stage prior to 18th century when death rates fell in Europe. Large young and small old population. 2. Seen in beginnings of developing populations. Population rises as death rate decreases. 19th century Europe. 3. Death rates and birth rates fall because of birth control, fewer childhood deaths, and children no longer needed to work, not economically beneficial. Slower expansion and longer-lived elderly. 4. Population stabilizes, both birth and death rates are low. Population is large. 5. Speculation. World population stabilizes, Malthusian theorem suggests. Run out of resources, food shortage. Leads to public health disaster and force population to stabilize and decrease birth rate, negative growth rate. Globalization theories. Globalization is the sharing of culture, money and products between countries. Not recent 1st century BCE Silk Route. World systems theory importance of world as a unit, divides world into three countries, core, periphery, and semi-periphery. Core equals Western Europe and US. Periphery equals Latin America and Africa. Greatly influenced by and depend on core countries and transnational corporations. Semi-periphery equals India and Brazil, middle ground. Criticized on being too focused on core countries and ignoring class struggles of individual countries. Modernization theory, all countries follow similar path of development to modern society. With some help, traditional countries can develop similarly to today's developed countries did. Dependency theory, reaction to modernization theory. Uses idea of core plus periphery countries to look at inequalities. Periphery countries export resources to core countries and don't have means to develop. Hyperglobalist perspective sees it as a new age in human history. Countries become interdependent and nation-states themselves are less important. Don't agree if good or bad. Skeptical perspective critical, considers it as being regionalized instead of globalized. Third world countries aren't being integrated into global economy with same benefits. Transformationalist perspective, doesn't have specific cause or outcome. Believe national governments are changing, perhaps becoming less important, but difficult to explain change so simply. They see the world order is changing. Just a new world order is being designed. Outcome unknown. Globalization, trade and transnational corporations. Trade has been created and supported by international regulatory groups like World Trade Organizations, and agreements like the NA Free Trade Agreement. No country completely independent. Without groups, trade would be impractical. They regulate flow of goods and services between countries, reduce tariffs, and make customs easier. Agreements often benefit private industries the most. Companies that extend beyond borders of a country are called multinational/transnational corporations. McDonald's or General Electric. Half of employees working in other countries. Some TNCs have more weight than entire nations, influence economics/politics by donating money, and influence global trade laws. Two major impacts on country on economy and culture. Much of economic globalization results from global market competition for cheap labor, and locating factories in cheapest locations. Developing nations provide incentives like tax-free zones or cheap labor so TNCs can bring jobs and industry to agricultural areas. Negatives, workers abroad exploited, and outsourcing can hurt core country. Positive, better allocation of resources, higher product output, more employment worldwide, cheaper prices. Cultural practices also passed and spread abroad, diffusion. Social movements. When a group of people come together with shared idea, can create lasting effects by shaping future of society. Need organization, leadership, and resources to make an impact. Activist movements aim to change some aspect of society, while regressive/reactionary movements resist change. Several theories of why they form. 1. Mass society theory. Skepticism about groups, said they only form for people seeking refuge from main society. Nazism. 2. Relative deprivation theory. Actions of groups oppressed/deprived of rights that others in society enjoy. Civil rights movement, a response to oppression to people of color. 3 things needed for social movement: relative deprivation, deserving better, and belief conventional methods are useless to help. Criticisms, people who don't feel deprived join social movement even if they don't suffer themselves. And too risky for oppressed to join a movement due to lack of resources. And when all three present, no social movement created. 3. Resource mobilization theory looks at social movements from different angle. Instead of looking at deprivation of people, focuses on factors that help/hinder a social movement like access to resources. Need money, materials, political influence, media, and strong organizational base to recruit members. Charismatic figure needed. Martin Luther King Jr. in civil rights movement. 4. Rational choice theory. People compare pros and cons of different courses of actions and choose the one they think is best for themselves. Have to assume all actions can be listed and transient. Also assumes person has full knowledge of outcomes. Rarely all true. Can cause widespread panics, crazes, fads, the anti-vaccine movement. Social movement begins with incipient stage, public takes notice. Will either succeed or have to adapt. In the end, become part of bureaucracy they try to change, become absorbed into institutions.